All right, hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show. Welcome in to those tuning in this evening. Got some pretty good games on television tonight to follow along with as well. I'm sitting here watching Ohio State beat up on Charleston Southern currently. Had the EKU Western Kentucky game on earlier. It's halftime right now. That game, which was supposed to be a super high tempo, high scoring game, is 35-30 at the half. Not exactly going how everybody probably expected that one to go, but nonetheless, it's at least a close game. Eastern Kentucky has a great home atmosphere there tonight. It looks like, and Western has not shot the ball well at all in the first half. But as we get some people to trickle in here and join us for the live stream on YouTube, first, please make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel here at the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show. Also, all of our audio gets uploaded to Spotify and some other various podcasting networks. So make sure that you download, subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, leave a review, all of that good stuff on the various platforms that we bring you the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show. But what I wanted to get into this evening was primarily um, just a look back at the last few days of the college basketball season, or I guess I should say the first few days of the college basketball season. Tonight, recording this on Thursday, obviously, and few days under our belts. Opening night was maybe a little lackluster just in terms of what you might hope for such a popular sport like Division One NCAA men's basketball. There were no real marquee matchups. I mean, probably the highest profile game was Memphis and Vanderbilt, which doesn't exactly turn too many heads itself. And in terms of top 25 matchups, there were no top 25 matchups. Interestingly enough, every single top 25 team actually played on the night, and they also, maybe somewhat surprisingly, actually went 25-0 on the evening in terms of looking at the preseason AP top 25 poll. But there were still a few kind of standout performances or games to look back on. Probably one of the bigger upsets of the night was Stetson, not as beating, but pretty comfortably taking down Florida State. They were in control of that game pretty much the whole way. Luke Brown had 27 points for Stetson. Probably more people that follow me might know who that name is. If you're from the state of Indiana, he's one of the all-time leading scorers in the state of Indiana. Just graduated a couple years ago. Kind of an interesting story there. He went to Stetson, left pretty quickly, transferred to Ball State, then went back to Stetson this year. But yeah, he poured in 27, was shooting it how a lot of us in Indiana have always kind of known he can, and they took down Florida State. Probably another one of the more exciting games of the evening was Akron against South Dakota State. That one had a real crazy finish to regulation. Kid from Akron stole the ball, had a wide open layup pretty much at the buzzer to win it in regulation, and it just rimmed out. Just literally a layup. Didn't go in, which sent it to overtime, and I guess probably luckily for that kid's psyche, Akron did hold on and win by 1 point in overtime. We'll talk about Akron a little bit more later in the podcast. Belmont took down Ohio 70-69. It's another matchup between good mid-major, even potential or certainly past NCAA tournament teams. So that was a pretty good game there. Then UNC Asheville had an exciting one, 98-96, over UCF in overtime. Drew Pember, a all conference, really high level player forward for Asheville, poured in 40 points in that game. And then probably one of the more exciting ones, especially looking at the top 25, was TCU, who had to come from behind, scratch and claw to barely beat Arkansas Pine Bluff. And there's a lot of times where you see a highly ranked team, even lose or go down to the wire with a low major type team like Arkansas Pine Bluff. But Arkansas Pine Bluff historically just honestly had a bad program. This is a team that that went 7-24 last year, but only 5 of those wins were against Division I opponents. And the 2 years prior to that, they won 4 games each. So this is a team that literally has won, 13 Division I games in the last 3 seasons, and they took one of the preseason darlings in TCU right down to the wire, and TCU had to escape with a 1 point win. Um, but also, speaking of kind of top teams that struggled, um, Creighton certainly didn't play very well against St. Thomas. St. Thomas is a team in Minnesota that has transitioned recently from Division III all the way up to Division I. Creighton did not shoot the ball well at all. Obviously, they're kind of expected to be one of the better offensive teams in the country. That was not the case on Monday night. Only scored 72 points. I think they were like 8 for 34 from 3 point range. They were not so much in fear of losing the game. I mean, it was double figures by crunch time, like 5 minutes to go or so. But St. Thomas was leading for a little while, and it was certainly close in the second half. Looking at some of the other top performances, one just in a game that I watched a little bit more of was, just because the time slot Stanford played a little bit earlier. Watched most of their game. Michael Jones, a transfer from Belmont, he scored 31 points for Stanford, against Pacific. Stanford didn't play great, but I think they won the game by 14 points. My Kentucky Wildcats, they were certainly impressive. 96-53 over Howard, playing without reigning National Player of the Year, Oscar Sheboy, playing without Bob Cousy Award finals, one of the top point guards in the country, Severe Wheeler, also playing without Damian Collins, who was back home after the tragic loss of his father. He was back home in Texas, handling that situation. But Kentucky looked great. Casey Wallace was amazing, filling in a point guard, 15 points, 18 points, whatever he finished up with. 9 assists, 8 rebounds, something like that. Just flirted with a triple double throughout the game. Antonio Reeves led the way, 23 points, made 6 threes. CJ Frederick was awesome as well with 20 or 21 points. It's a really great showing, especially offensively, for a Kentucky team that was missing some of their top guys. Michigan continued to be impressive, a team that I've written a lot about, or wrote and talked a lot about leading into the preseason. They were my pick to win the Big Ten. Even flirted with a future for them to win the national championship. And it's a 1 game sample size, but looks pretty good so far. Hunter Dickinson looked like the All-American that he is, 22 points, 12 rebounds. Jet Howard backed up his big game in their exhibition with another 20-plus point performance, knocked in 5 threes against Purdue Fort Wayne in a pretty easy win for the Wolverines. And yeah, that kind of wraps up at least the notable stuff from opening night. I mean, like I said, on paper it was chalk, 25-0 from the top 25 teams, something like 160 odd games, whatever it was. But nothing really too exciting on that opening night. Some of the games I watched on Tuesday, Providence was in action. Providence, team that came out and was at the top of the Big East last year, had an excellent season, but there was a lot of turnover there. They hit the transfer portal hard and certainly looked a little unsteady, for lack of a better term, on Tuesday. Bryce Hopkins, the Kentucky transfer, led the way with 18 points, but really inefficient from the field. I think he was 3 for 12, did most of his work at the foul line where he was 11 for 16. But just as a team, Providence didn't shoot the ball well. They had to come back late. I think they were down 10, and it's clearly taken their new guys a little bit more time maybe than some people had hoped, at least in Friar Country, for them to get acclimated to Coach Cooley's system. Watched pretty much the entire Purdue game, and they looked great with their freshman backcourt. Braden Smith, Indiana Mr. Basketball, was just doing everything from the opening tip. He's a guy that can impact the game at such a high level without needing to shoot or score the ball. It's 7 assists or 7 steals, excuse me, on the game. Looks like a guy who's going to be in Big Ten All Defensive Team considerations. Fletcher Lawyer drained 4 or 5 threes, had 17 points as the other freshman starting in the Boilermakers backcourt. It was really like what Matt Painter does. We've talked about this on the podcast before, but he kind of has an old school sort of program built there, in West Lafayette, where he's able to redshirt some top recruits. Trey Kaufman-Wren came in, played serious minutes last night Tuesday night, excuse me, as a former four-star who redshirted last year. You had Brian Waddle, who's another Indiana kid who redshirted and waited his turn to play some minutes off the bench. Caleb First is playing a bigger role now with the absence of Travion Williams, who graduated, and you just have guys that are stepping into roles as they get older, not transferring out, even allowing themselves to be redshirted and get used to the system there. So it's really impressive what Purdue has built. Another game that I watched quite a bit of was Georgetown's win over Coppin State. They ended up pulling away in overtime to win by 10, but clearly needed overtime to do it. It was just kind of interesting that I think it was three guys on Georgetown played over 40 minutes in that game, and they only got three shots from their bench in a game that went to overtime. I actually like the starting five there, and I think Coppin State is a solid team under Juan Dixon. They have some good veteran guards there, and I think they're going to win some games in their league. But probably expected more out of Georgetown than what I saw. Thought they were a team that would be really improved from their winless Big East team last year. And obviously, I wouldn't expect them to necessarily go winless again, but they didn't show me anything really near what I expected to see from them on Tuesday night. Last night, Wednesday night, couple notable games. Certainly Bellarmine's win over their city rival in Louisville. Louisville's a team that we know their struggles in the preseason. Had to fight to beat Division II Chaminade, lost by 10 to Division II Lenoir Ryan. So expectations weren't high for them to be able to beat a very well coached, veteran, disciplined, and good Bellarmine team. But still, this isn't the Bellarmine team that in theory should have been in the big dance last year after winning the A-Sun. This is still a very, very good Bellarmine team, but it's not probably a NCAA tournament caliber team that was winning comfortably most of the game. Ended up only winning by one. Kind of started to tighten up and almost gave it away there at the end. But still, certainly, anytime you have a team still transitioning from Division II to Division I, beat a program the caliber of Louisville, it's a historic program building type of win for Coach Davenport and the Knights at Bellarmine, but just a true embarrassment for Louisville. And I don't care what sort of turmoil you've been through. I don't care about the coaching change. The fact that you're going to lose to Bellarmine, and I'm friends with people on the Bellarmine staff. I love their program at Davenport and his son, the other Coach Davenport, Coach Bo Braden, all those guys. But it's still one of those things where that if Louisville's good, that should never happen, and it just shows what the state of Louisville Cardinal basketball currently. The other best game, which I pretty much watched all of as well, was Wright State and Davidson. Wright State came in as an underdog, controlled the game. They were up 16 at halftime, up double figures through most of the second half. Foster Loyer was just getting hotter and hotter as the game went on. Forced overtime. Looked like Davidson was going to win it in overtime. Wright State comes back from a 4-point deficit, forces a second overtime where they end up falling by 5 for +4 betters. That was no fun. But Foster Loyer, 38 points, 11 rebounds, 9 assists. Just an incredible game for him. Trey Calvin at 37 on the other side for Wright State, but definitely Foster Loyer was the story. He's an all-league performer there for Belmont, certainly, or for Davidson, excuse me. Former Michigan State Spartan, extremely skilled shooter, but really showed the expansion of his game on Wednesday night. Tonight, like I said, currently watching Ohio State, Charleston Southern. I'm going to check real quick. I think EKU and Western Kentucky should be back at it now in the second half. Let's see where we're at there. Eastern Kentucky's up by 5, 44-39, still pretty early in the second half. That'll be a heck of a win for Eastern Kentucky. Western comes into this season with very high expectations. They definitely underachieved last year for a variety of reasons. Some was simple overachieving, or underachieving, excuse me. Some was some bad injury luck. But Davian McKnight their best player and first team all league guy in Conference USA. He came in and started the night 0 for 9 tonight when I was watching earlier. EKU has some really strong guard play. Tempo hasn't quite been where you would expect us. There's just been more turnovers, more missed shots this game than maybe you would have thought. But still, certainly a fun matchup that we'll continue to follow throughout the evening. Also, if anybody has any questions, feel free to hop into the chat here. That's why we go live for you guys to hop in and ask questions as we go along here. If you would like to, so I would love to hear from some of you listening. If you want to dive into the chat, obviously for podcast listeners that doesn't apply to you, but feel free anytime to reach out to me on Twitter at bramseyksr. You can ask me any questions you want there. I'll either answer them right away, or if I have a show coming up, certainly will always answer them on the show. A couple other things I wanted to do tonight. I'm going to keep this one a little bit shorter, but wanted to go ahead and look ahead to the weekend. Some of the top matchups. Friday tomorrow is kind of the first really good matchup day across the slate. I'll dive into some more of the games tomorrow, Friday morning when I put out my daily gambling picks on Twitter. By the way, if you haven't been following along for those, if for no other reason that you follow me on Twitter, certainly you'll want to go to at bramseyksr each day and check out those videos I'm putting out. Usually just a quick 5 to 8 minute breakdown of some of the top games of the day. I'll give my leans or best bets on those. Doing pretty well so far this season. So if you've been following along, you probably made a little bit of coin. But most importantly, you get some really good information on some of the top games of the day. And Friday we'll actually have some a little more exciting games to talk about. But three I really want to dive into first and foremost. You have the Armed Forces Classic coming in. I believe that's at 6:30 Eastern Time Friday evening, and that's the game between Gonzaga and Michigan State, which is going to be played on an aircraft carrier out in San Diego. So yes, we're going to have some outdoor basketball on Friday night. Excuse me. Yeah, outdoor basketball on the aircraft carrier, really cool thing. Obviously, it's a neat thing for the armed forces members who get to be there for that game and kind of get it in their own literal backyard there on the carrier. Should be a really good atmosphere. I know this is something that's been done in the past, and it's always a cool event. But you're going to get to see a Gonzaga team that's once again one of the top teams in the country, currently ranked number 2 offensively, with Drew Timme and Nolan Hickman at point guard, and what else they have. You're going to see one of the top offensive teams in the country. You're going to see a National Player of the Year candidate in Timme going against a Michigan State squad that has quite a bit of talent in their own right. Interested to see how those guys are looking early in the season. So far, I watched one of Sparty's exhibition games against Grand Valley State. Certainly looked pretty good there. AJ Hoggard's looking good in the backcourt. Joey Hauser's playing some of the best basketball that I've seen from him. Also really interested to see how freshman Jackson Kohler potentially matches up with Drew Timme. That's going to be a really interesting one to follow between Kohler and Timme if they do ever kind of square off and go head to head at all there. Yeah, so the Armed Forces Classic, that's certainly going to be one to follow along and watch. And then the other really fun event that's going to be going on Friday will be the Barstool Invitational, kind of a one of its kind sort of event that Barstool's putting on. It's not going to be on TV. It's just going to be on their YouTube channel, as far as I know. Those guys always make things really fun, so I'm sure it'll be a unique and interesting event. But also features 2 early season great matchups. The first game of the night is going to be honestly one of the best mid-major matchups you could possibly ask for in UAB versus Toledo, 2 very well-coached teams with a little bit of star power in the backcourt as well. For Toledo, Ray J. Dennis is coming off a really big game in their first game of the season. I believe he had like 23 points or so in a win over Valpo. Then you obviously have Jordan Jelly Walker on the other side for UAB. He had 38 in their opening night win. A couple other Division One transfers there for Coach Kennedy. You have Eric Gaines from LSU. You have KJ Buffin from Ole Miss, and then you have Ladarius Brewer from East Tennessee State. All those guys are starting and playing serious minutes for UAB, who I believe is favored so far. I think that they were a 4-point favorite over Toledo. Like I said, if you're dreaming up a mid-major matchup, this is probably about as good as you can get. And to get it this early in the season is going to be a really, really cool thing. That's going to be a very high tempo game. Both teams are top 50 type of teams in terms of the pace they want to play at. Both teams have already put up points early in the season. Toledo had 85 against UAB or against Valpo, excuse me. UAB put up 111 on Alabama State in their opener. Like I said, Jelly Walker had 38 in that game. The second game of that invitational on Friday is going to be a very different, contrasting style. You're going to get Mississippi State going against Akron, two teams that really want to slow it down. They're more in the 300 to the bottom of the NCAA in terms of pace. So certainly at the other end of the spectrum between game one and game two. I think the X factor here is probably going to be Tolu Smith from Mississippi State. Akron doesn't really play anybody over 6'7", 6'8". So I think being able to throw it inside to a potential all SEC performer in Tolu Smith will really help the Bulldogs most likely take care of business there. But Akron had a lot of success in their first game of the season, offensively at least. They squeaked one out like we talked about earlier, 81-80 in overtime in an exciting game against South Dakota State. In that one, it was Xavier Castaneda who had 31 points. He was 8 of 12 from 3-point range, I believe, in that one. So you're going to get some good guard play, some really skilled players. Enrique Freeman was a 6'7", kind of strong athletic forward. He had 23 points and 14 rebounds in Akron's opener, which he'll kind of be an interesting matchup for some of the Mississippi State guys, namely probably DJ Jeffries. The Memphis transfer will probably be going head to head with Freeman there. But like I said, I kind of think Tolu Smith, just his big bruising body inside, probably be the difference for Mississippi State there. Those are the three games I'm really looking forward to following Friday night. I'll actually be at the Kentucky Duquesne game at Rep Arena Friday night, so won't really get to watch much of those live, but probably Sunday into Monday, definitely be going back and watching those on film to get a feel for some of those big matchups. But certainly be fun for you all to watch if you're watching from home on your TVs on Friday evening. Like I said, I'm going to break down some of the other top. There are probably 3, 4, 5 other pretty solid head-to-head matchups on Friday night, but those are kind of the marquee television games that I wanted to go ahead and talk a little bit about this evening. I'll have more if you follow me at BRamseyKSR on Twitter when I break some things down in the morning, just with a quick video there. But I think if we don't have any more questions from the listeners this evening, probably go ahead and start wrapping things up. Keep this to a pretty tight about 30 minutes. Just wanted to, like I said, dive in and get a little update on the college basketball scene so far this season. Nothing too outlandish has necessarily happened yet. Obviously, very small sample size. People are just starting to get into their second games. So I think over the next week, we'll certainly see some teams find their footing. We're just a few days away now from the Champions Classic. We're just 10 days or so away from Feast Week, really getting going, where we are going to get some very premier matchups, some fun tournaments, and certainly make sure you're following right here on this channel for in-depth breakdowns of everything heading into those marquee matchups. We'll have a guest on at some point next week just to mix things up and dive a little bit deeper into the college basketball scene. So stay tuned for that. Like I said, please make sure you have subscribed to the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show here on YouTube. At least once a week, I plan on still diving in and doing these live shows just to be able to interact with the listeners a little bit more. I do enjoy this format. Probably do at least one other purely podcast type of feed, which you'll be able to find on Spotify if you just search the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show you can get everything downloaded and subscribe there as well. And like I said, I will start starting next week. I will start having probably one guest on every week, at least every other week. Um, Probably going to do some more kind of nerdy X's and O's, chalk talk type of stuff as well, just for some quick hitter information. Maybe 5 to 10 minute segments here that we'll also post on the YouTube page. So some different fun things to stick around for and look for in the future. But I'm going to get back to watching some of these games here on Thursday night. Still some good matchups going on. Let you guys get back to whatever you're doing and watching games as well. But one more time, please like this video on YouTube, share it with your friends, subscribe to the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show here on YouTube. And like I said, please leave the video a like as well. On Spotify, find the show, the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show as well. And, download our podcast there. Make sure you subscribe to that channel as well. You can find me on Twitter at BRamseyKSR. And in the meantime, enjoy watching the rest of the games. Like I said, I'll be on Twitter tomorrow morning for a little bit more on those games. Probably back Sunday evening with a podcast episode as well, recapping the weekend and looking forward to next week. So enjoy and have everybody have a great weekend. Thanks for listening.